weight categories. What do you need to know, and do you care? Okay, weight categories are pretty simple to understand. As powerlifters, we get lumped together in groups of people or lifters that are of a similar age and a similar weight, and we compete against each other in that way. So every federation has a set of weight categories that you lift in. I'm going to talk about two. I'm going to talk about the IPFs and the WPCs. Now, the IPF, the International Powerlifting Federation, is probably the one as a novice lifter you stumble across first. It is the biggest. WPC, the World Powerlifting Congress, is the federation I lift under, British Powerlifting Union. We have weight categories. They are different to the IPF, so we'll use them just to compare and contrast. So if we have a look at the IPF weight categories, so you can see there, obviously they're split by men and women, and there's a list of long numbers. So if we take the women, 43, 47, 52, 57, etc, etc, etc. So what does that mean? So if we take the 57 and the 63, let's take those numbers, and if we say the 63 specifically, we are going to concentrate on. Now, what that means is, if you lift in the 63s, and that's how people will say it, I lift in the 63s, the 57s, whatever. That's the cool speak. You can be anything between 57 and a bit, anything over 57 kilos, but up to and including 63 kilos. So anywhere within that range. So 57 point something up to 63 on the nose. I don't ever suggest you try and hit a weight category absolutely smack on the nose. You might by mistake, but you're a bit of a hostage to fortune if that's the case. So you can see the way they work. So if you took if you said you lifted in the 57s, you can see the lower end of that's 52, the number before it. So that means you can be anything over 52 kilos, but either on the nose at 57 or below 57. So what you'll see is in most competitions is some weight categories are a lot more popular than others. Certainly if you look at the males, the 93s, the 105s, they're normally packed, and they're super competitive. So avoid them if you can, especially if you're in the open class. So the upper end of the weight class, let's go back to the women, so let's look at that again. So the upper end of that weight class is 84 plus. So that means as soon as you go over the 84 kilos, you all get lumped together. And there is a bit of an issue with this, and the IPF knows there's a bit of an issue with it, and there's an issue with the WPC, to be honest, as well. Now that means that if, say, you're 86 kilos, so you're only 2 kilos over that cutoff point, is you might be lifting with somebody that's 120 kilos, maybe even heavier. And it's going to make a difference. It really, really is going to make a difference. So the IPF are looking at this, and I'm not sure what they're going to do at the moment. They might introduce another weight category, or they might move that category out slightly. I don't know. Pick a number. But if they do, I'll update the video. I'll do another video about it. Now, as I say, I lift under World Powerlifting Congress, and they use these categories. Ta-da! You can see here, there's a lot more numbers, isn't there? Yes. Are they better? Obviously, because I lift with them, therefore I think they're better. There is a broader range, particularly with the men, and I'll talk about them separately. But you can say with the women there, straight off the bat, you have that 90 plus category, which is exactly, works in the same way as the IPF's 84 plus. It's just slightly higher. Even at that weight, you're still going to get problems. If you're 91 kilos and you're lifting against somebody that's 120, you're going to get your ass handed to you. That's just going to be with it. And that's where, your second or third competitions, you might look at coming down a weight class. You might. If you're giving up 30 kilos against somebody, you have two choices. Either you're going to come down into a lower weight class, or you're going to put on 30 kilos. Yeah, it's not happening, is it? So just be aware of it, but don't worry about it. If we look at the men, you can see there's the 140 pluses, so we call them the super heavyweights, and there is some big boys in there. There really is. I was at the British a year or two ago, and I weighed in at about 121, 2 kilos. And while I'm not the biggest guy in the world, I'm not small. I'm really not. Anyway, I was talking to a guy called George. He weighed in at 179 kilos. He was huge. Absolutely. Well, I'm not talking some big fat geezer, fat dripping off him. He was just huge. Well, I reckoned he was about half as wide as me again. Absolutely massive. So that happens. That really does. I lift in the 125s for the WPC, so that means I can be anywhere between over 110 or 125 and lower. So that's 15 kilos in that range. I never quite get up to the 125, about 120-ish seems to be my set point, and I have looked at coming down into the 110s, and I tried it, and the strength loss was just made me want to cry a lot, so I'm just staying in there. I'm just staying in the 125s and just be what it'll be, which is interesting because this is what I'm trying to tell you lot to do. So your first competition, don't worry about it. Honestly, don't worry about it. Turn up, weigh in, lift in whatever category they put you in, go 9 for 9 and go home. Yeah, do not worry about making weight. So I'll just pick on that. So you might hear people say, oh, I need to make weight, I need to make weight. So take the example of an IPF lifter in the 63 kilo, female lifter in 63. She may walk around at 64, 65 kilos. And what they do through varying processes is they drop weight. So they will drop weight just before the competition. So they'll drop 65 and they'll just drop under the 63. So they can make weight, it's called. Certainly, some of the competitions I have, you will see people running around outside, trying to lose weight, literally spitting, or there's all sorts of things going on. You really don't need that sort of negativity in your first competition, so don't bother. Just don't bother, just lift in whatever you go. I just want to caveat that though, and I just want to highlight a slight difference between the federations here, and it's quite a valid one. So in the IPF, you are meant to lift in the stipulated, the weight class you said you were going to lift in. So for your first competition, a novice competition, this really doesn't matter, and I've got to stress this, nobody cares. Just turn up, weigh in, whatever. Fine. It's more of a problem if you're at national or you're at international level with the IPF, is if you are in the 63s, let's take that example again there, and you're down to lift on the British team and the 63s, and you turn up and you're 64 kilos, not happening. You're not going to be very popular with your teammates, and you probably just spent all your money on the ticket and whatever you to get there, and it's been a waste. So be aware. But as I say, there, WPC, we are slightly different. So if that happened with the WPC, is you just lift, you can go one category up or down. So for me in the 125s, if I just weighed slightly over, I could lift in the 140s. Or I could, if I was under for some bizarre reason, I could lift in the 110s. So with weight classes and categories, or categories we should call them, is what we say is you really need to make use of them. So there's no point being right at the bottom end of that range. If you're in the 63s, you need to be 62 kilos plus, yeah? You need to make use of that weight, particularly in those hyper competitive classes like the men's 105s, the women's 63s. It's why I keep picking on it. There's a lot of lifters in the 63s. So you need to make use of that weight category. If you struggle in one way or the other, then as your lifting career goes on, is you may jump, you may go up. Certainly what you will find as a novice, most likely, is you are just going to go up a few weight classes as you start. As you've been training longer, you will just put on more mass and you will just get heavier and you will end up in a different weight class. I can pretty much guarantee that for anybody, that does this for any length of time. Right, as per usual, if you've got any questions, dump them in the comments below and I'll answer them. If not, hope that helped.